The aroma of garlic and rosemary filled the air as Liam watched his daughter, Sophie, carefully twirl her pasta. Sunday lunches at Giovanni's were their ritual, a small island of normalcy in a life forever changed by loss. To anyone else, they were just a father and daughter enjoying a meal. No one could guess that 2 years ago, Liam's wife, Isabella, a brilliant architect, had vanished when her charter flight disappeared over the Atlantic. No wreckage, no bodies, only a void of grief. "That was amazing, Dad," Sophie said, her green eyes, so like her mother's, sparkling. "Better than my attempt at carbonara last week?" Liam teased. "A million times better," she giggled. "But your pancakes are still the best." Liam smiled, his heart aching with a familiar blend of love and sorrow. Sophie had been only 6 when the plane disappeared. Her resilience was a light in his darkness. "Can we go to the park?" Sophie asked, wiping a smear of sauce from her chin. "Sure, sweetheart. But first, let's get you cleaned up." After paying the bill, they stepped out into a dreary afternoon. A light drizzle began to fall as they hurried toward the car park. Suddenly, Sophie stopped, her small hand tightening around Liam's. "Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Look." Liam followed her gaze across the street to a figure huddled in a shop doorway. A woman, shrouded in layers of worn-out clothing, her face obscured by a hood. A common, heartbreaking sight in the city. "Dad," Sophie insisted, her voice barely audible. "That lady, she looks like Mom." Liam's first instinct was to dismiss it, a child's wishful thinking. But then the woman lifted her head to watch the rain, and Liam's world shattered. Beneath the grime and exhaustion was a face he had loved for a decade. The same high cheekbones, the same gentle curve of her lips, and above her right eyebrow, the faint, familiar scar from a long-ago childhood fall. "It can't be," he breathed, his pulse thundering in his ears. Isabella was gone. They had mourned, they had buried an empty casket. "It's her," Sophie said, her certainty cutting through his disbelief. Heart hammering, Liam crossed the street, his approach cautious. "Isabella?" he called out, his voice cracking. The woman flinched, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. There was no recognition in them, only the primal wariness of a stray animal. "It's me, Liam. Your husband." At his words, she scrambled backward, clutching a tattered bag to her chest. "Stay away," she mumbled, before turning to flee down a narrow alley. "Isabella, wait." But she was gone, swallowed by the labyrinth of the city. Liam stood frozen, rain soaking through his coat, as Sophie caught up to him, her small face etched with hope and fear. "Was it really her, Dad?" I don't know, sweetheart," he stammered, the truth too immense to grasp. "But we're going to find out." From that day, Liam's life gained a new purpose. He began a meticulous search, returning to that spot day after day with food and a quiet, patient presence. He learned to call her Marie, the name she gave him, the only one she remembered. Weeks turned into a fragile routine of shared lunches on a park bench. Slowly, he pieced together her story, waking up in a hospital with no memory, a Jane Doe who fled the system, finding a precarious existence on the streets. One afternoon, he showed her a photograph from his wallet, a picture of the 3 of them, happy and whole. Marie, Isabella, stared at it for a long time, a single tear tracing a path through the dirt on her cheek. "She looks like me," she whispered. "No," Liam said gently. "You look like her." The dam of her amnesia began to crack not with a dramatic flood, but with small, precious leaks. A song on the radio made her hum along unconsciously. The smell of lavender fabric softener brought a fleeting sense of peace. And one night, Liam found her standing in the doorway of Sophie's room, watching their daughter sleep. As he watched, unseen, Isabella reached out and gently brushed the hair from Sophie's forehead. "Sweet dreams, my little star," she whispered, a phrase from 1,000 forgotten bedtimes. It was the proof Liam needed. The woman he loved was still in there, trapped behind a wall of trauma. Bringing her home was the beginning of a different battle. The sleek, modern house was a foreign landscape to her. She startled at her reflection, overwhelmed by the life she couldn't remember. Sophie, with the boundless patience of a child who just wanted her mother back, learned to love the stranger in their midst, leaving drawings for her and talking about her day without pressure. With the help of a specialist, Dr. Evans, Isabella began the painful journey of reintegration. Memories returned as disjointed fragments, the taste of her mother's lasagna, the feel of sand beneath her feet on an Italian beach. The traumatic crash itself returned in terrifying nightmares, leaving her shaking and disoriented. Through it all, Liam and Sophie were her anchors. The breakthrough came on an ordinary Tuesday. Sophie was struggling with a school project, on the verge of tears. Isabella sat beside her, and with a quiet confidence, began explaining the assignment. Her hands, which had once drafted intricate blueprints, guided her daughter's. It was a skill that had survived the wreckage of her mind. Later that evening, Liam found Isabella in her studio, a room she had avoided for months. She was standing before a drafting table, a blank sheet of paper before her. She wasn't drawing, just tracing the wood grain with her fingers. "I may never remember everything," she said, sensing his presence. "I may never be exactly who I was." Liam's heart sank. But then she turned to him, and for the first time, her eyes held not fear or confusion, but a quiet certainty. "But I know who I am now," she continued. "I'm the woman who loves you and Sophie. That's the only memory that really matters." She walked over to him and took his hand, her grip firm and sure. It was no longer the tentative touch of a guest, but the confident hold of a partner coming home. The family they rebuilt was different, its foundation forged in patience and a love that had endured the unimaginable. The past was a collection of stories they would slowly rediscover together, but the present was a gift, a second chance written not in the ashes of what was lost, but in the unwavering light of what had always remained.